Welcome to Book Nibbles, Big Ideas, Small Bites. Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is not just a self-help book in the traditional sense. It is a framework for rethinking how we live, work, and interact with others. Rather than promising quick fixes or surface-level tricks, Covey emphasizes a shift in character, in principles, in the very lens through which we see the world. He argues that true effectiveness comes not from personality hacks or manipulative techniques, but from aligning oneself with timeless principles and building habits that, once internalized, shape our lives at the deepest levels. Reading it feels less like consuming advice and more like being invited to change the way you interpret human behavior, success, and personal growth. Covey begins with a distinction that sets the tone for the whole book: the difference between the personality ethic and the character ethic. The personality ethic, which much of the modern self-help industry has leaned on, focuses on techniques, public speaking strategies, ways of appearing confident, tricks to get people to like you. While these might bring short-term gains, they tend to collapse under pressure because they lack a solid foundation. The character ethic, on the other hand, is about cultivating core values such as integrity, humility, responsibility, and fairness. Covey argues that lasting success, whether in relationships, business, or personal fulfillment, only comes from building on these principles, because principles are natural laws that don't change with fashion or circumstance. Just as physical laws govern gravity, there are moral and psychological laws that govern human flourishing. From this grounding, Covey introduces the central metaphor of the book, the map. He says that often in life, people rely on flawed maps, beliefs or assumptions about reality, that do not match the actual territory. If your map is wrong, no matter how determined you are, no matter how much energy you expend, you will not get where you want to go. The key is to ensure that your maps are aligned with reality and with principles that stand the test of time. Once that alignment is established, then techniques and skills become useful tools because they are applied on a solid base. The framework he builds around this philosophy is the 7 habits. Covey doesn't present them as independent tricks, but as a sequential growth process, moving from dependence to independence to interdependence. He frames human development in 3 stages. First is dependence, where we rely on others for guidance and support, much like children depend on parents. Second is independence, where we learn to take responsibility for our choices, develop self-mastery, and stand on our own feet. Finally comes interdependence, which Covey views as the highest level, because life is not about being an island but about collaborating, contributing, and building together with others. Interdependence is where effectiveness truly blossoms, because the synergy of people working well together produces results greater than the sum of their parts. Covey's first 3 habits are about moving from dependence to independence. Mastery of self. The first habit, be proactive, is foundational. It is about recognizing that as human beings we have the ability to choose our responses. While animals are bound by instinct and conditioning, humans have what Covey calls the space between stimulus and response. Within that space lies our power to choose. Proactive people focus on what they can control, their circle of influence, while reactive people waste energy on things beyond their control, their circle of concern. For example, someone stuck in traffic might curse, fume, and arrive home irritated, letting external circumstances dictate their mood. A proactive person, however, recognizes they cannot control traffic but can control their attitude. They might use the time to listen to an audiobook, reflect quietly, or simply accept the delay with patience. This shift from reactivity to proactivity is empowering, because it places responsibility squarely in our own hands. Covey stresses that responsibility is literally the ability to respond. People who are proactive stop blaming others, circumstances, or luck. They focus instead on what they can do to improve a situation. Over time, this builds trust, credibility, and influence. The second habit, begin with the end in mind, extends this proactive stance into vision. Covey suggests imagining your own funeral. What would you want people to say about you? What kind of person would you want to be remembered as? By visualizing the end, we gain clarity about our core values and life goals. Without this clarity, people can end up climbing the ladder of success only to find it leaning against the wrong wall. Covey encourages readers to craft personal mission statements, guiding documents that articulate one's principles and long-term aims. For instance, A teacher might write a mission statement focused on nurturing curiosity and integrity in students, while a business leader might emphasize fairness, innovation, and service. These mission statements serve as compasses, guiding decisions big and small. They allow us to prioritize meaningfully instead of reacting blindly to urgent distractions. In practice, someone who begins with the end in mind may ask, when offered a job promotion that requires constant travel, does this align with my deeper goals of being present for my family? If the answer is no, they might turn down the promotion, even if it looks like success by conventional measures. This habit is about living intentionally rather than drifting. The third habit, put first things first, is about discipline and time management in service of those higher goals. Covey introduces his famous time management matrix, which divides tasks into 4 quadrants: urgent and important, not urgent but important, urgent but not important, and neither urgent nor important. Most people live in quadrant 1, fighting fires, dealing with crises, managing deadlines. Some waste time in quadrant 4, idle distractions. True effectiveness, Covey insists, comes from spending more time in quadrant 2, the not urgent but important activities: planning, exercising, nurturing relationships, long-term projects, learning. These are the things that don't scream for attention but yield the greatest benefits over time. For example, a manager might spend hours every day handling employee complaints, urgent and important. But if they spent more time training and empowering staff, important but not urgent, the number of crises would diminish. Similarly, maintaining health through regular exercise or building trust in a relationship are quadrant 2 activities that prevent future emergencies. To live this habit requires saying no to things that are urgent but not aligned with priorities. It also requires courage, because sometimes it means disappointing others or defying cultural pressures to always be busy. But the reward is a life shaped around what matters most. With these 3 habits, Covey transitions readers from dependence to independence. Yet independence, though powerful, is not the ultimate goal. Many self-help books stop at personal mastery, but Covey insists that interdependence, our ability to work effectively with others, is where the highest fruits lie. This is where habits 4, 5, and 6 come in. The 4th habit, think win-win, addresses the mindset with which we approach relationships. Covey outlines 6 possible paradigms: win-win, win-lose, lose-win, lose-lose, win, and win-win or no deal. Win-lose is the competitive frame where one's gain is another's loss, a mentality often ingrained in school or business. Lose-win is capitulation, sacrificing one's needs to please others, often at the cost of resentment. Lose-lose is mutual destruction, born of spite or revenge. Win is self-centered, not even considering others. Covey argues that the healthiest paradigm is win-win, where both parties seek mutual benefit. It is not a matter of being nice but of being principled. In the long run, relationships built on win-win endure and prosper, while those built on manipulation or domination eventually collapse. He acknowledges that not all situations allow win-win, which is why he also advocates win-win or no deal, agreeing that if mutual benefit cannot be found, it is better to part ways amicably. For example, in a business negotiation, a win-win mindset would seek terms that profit both companies rather than squeezing one dry. In parenting, a win-win approach might involve negotiating curfews with teenagers in a way that respects both parental authority and the teenagers' growing independence. Thinking win-win requires a belief in abundance, that life is not a zero-sum game, that there is enough success, recognition, and opportunity to go around. The 5th habit, seek first to understand, then to be understood, is perhaps one of the most transformative in the book. Covey notes that most people listen with the intent to reply, not to understand. They filter others' words through their own frame, often missing the real meaning. Instead, he advocates empathic listening, truly putting oneself in the other's shoes, listening not only to words but to feelings and intent. This requires patience, openness, and a suspension of judgment. Only after deeply understanding the other person should one seek to communicate one's own perspective. Covey illustrates this with a story of a father who complained that he could not understand his son and that his son simply would not listen. Covey pointed out the irony. The father wanted to be understood before he was willing to understand. In practical terms, empathic listening diffuses defensiveness, builds trust, and often reveal solutions that were hidden beneath miscommunication. In the workplace, a manager who listens deeply to employees' frustrations might uncover systemic issues rather than dismissing complaints. In marriage, a partner who listens without rushing to fix problems often creates deeper connection. This habit is about valuing others' perspectives as much as our own and recognizing that genuine influence begins with understanding. The sixth habit, synergize, is the culmination of interdependence. Synergy means that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. It arises when people bring diverse perspectives, strengths, and creativity together, not in compromise but in true collaboration. Compromise, Covey explains, is often a 1 + 1 = 1.5 scenario. Both sides give something up. Synergy, on the other hand, is 1 + 1 = 3 or more, producing outcomes neither party could have imagined alone. This requires valuing differences rather than tolerating them, seeing them as opportunities to expand understanding rather than threats. For instance, in a team setting, instead of arguing over whose idea is better, members might combine their approaches to create a superior solution. In family life, spouses with different temperaments might, by valuing each other's perspectives, create a parenting style more balanced than either would manage alone. Synergy thrives in an atmosphere of openness, respect, and trust, and it depends on the earlier habits. Without proactivity, a clear sense of priorities, and win-win thinking, synergy cannot flourish. But when it does, it unleashes creativity and innovation far beyond individual effort. Finally, Covey presents the seventh habit, sharpen the saw, which is about self-renewal. He uses the metaphor of a woodcutter who is too busy sawing to sharpen his saw, gradually becoming less effective. In life, we too must continually renew ourselves in 4 dimensions: physical, mental, social/emotional, and spiritual. Physically, this means caring for the body through exercise, nutrition, and rest. Mentally, it involves continual learning, reading, writing, and critical thinking. Socially and emotionally, it means nurturing relationships, practicing service, and maintaining emotional balance. Spiritually, it is about connecting with deeper values and meaning, whether through prayer, meditation, nature, or reflection. Without renewal, people burn out, stagnate, and lose effectiveness. Covey stresses that sharpening the saw is not indulgence but necessity. It keeps us capable of practicing all the other habits. For example, a professional who continually learns remains adaptable in a changing industry, while one who neglects growth becomes obsolete. A parent who takes care of their health has more energy and patience to engage with children. Sharpening the saw sustains effectiveness for the long haul. Taken together, these habits create a coherent philosophy of life. Covey emphasizes that they are habits, not isolated actions. A habit is the intersection of knowledge, what to do, skill, how to do it, and desire, wanting to do it. Changing habits requires effort and persistence, but once ingrained, they become automatic patterns that shape character and results. He also stresses that effectiveness is a balance between production, what is created, and production capability, the ability to keep producing. If you focus only on production, you risk burning out or depleting resources. If you focus only on capability without producing, you achieve nothing. For example, overworking employees might yield short-term results but destroy morale and long-term productivity. Conversely, endlessly training without ever delivering results also fails. The 7 habits create a balance between achieving results and maintaining the capacity to continue achieving. Throughout the book, Covey illustrates his points with examples from family, business, and community life. A recurring theme is the contrast between quick-fix approaches and principle-centered living. For instance, someone might use flattery to gain cooperation, but over time, if they lack sincerity, people will see through it. Someone might use intimidation to control employees, but such fear-based tactics erode trust and creativity. On the other hand, someone who consistently acts with integrity, seeks win-win, and listens empathetically builds a reputation that amplifies influence naturally. Covey argues that principle-centered people become trustworthy, and trust is the foundation of effectiveness in all relationships. The book's impact lies in how practical and universal these ideas are. Consider a workplace. A proactive employee focuses on solutions rather than complaining about problems. They begin with the end in mind, aligning their work with the company's mission. They put first things first by prioritizing key projects over endless emails. They think win-win by seeking outcomes that benefit both colleagues and customers. They seek first to understand, listening carefully in meetings before asserting their own views. They synergize by combining diverse ideas into creative solutions. And they sharpen the saw by continually learning, maintaining health, and building strong relationships. Such an employee naturally becomes invaluable. The same applies at home. A parent who models these habits fosters a family environment of trust, growth, and connection. One of the most powerful aspects of Covey's work is that it demands accountability. It is easier to blame circumstances, bosses, spouses, or society for our difficulties. Covey insists instead that we look inward. What is within my circle of influence? How can I live aligned with principles? How can I change myself first? This perspective is both challenging and liberating. Challenging because it removes excuses. Liberating because it reveals our power to shape our lives regardless of circumstances. In reviewing the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, one can see why it has endured for decades. It is not trendy or gimmicky. It is rooted in timeless truths about human nature. It doesn't promise shortcuts. It calls for deep, sustained growth. It is less about success in the narrow sense and more about effectiveness in the broad sense, living a life of integrity, purpose, and contribution. The habits are interdependent. Proactivity without vision may lead to aimless busyness. Vision without discipline remains a dream. Discipline without a win-win mindset can become rigid and isolating. But woven together, they form a holistic framework that addresses the whole person. Perhaps the greatest strength of the book is how it reframes success not as something external, wealth, status, accolades, but as something internal. Character, integrity, relationships, and the ability to contribute meaningfully. In a world often obsessed with appearances and quick gains, Covey's message is a reminder that true effectiveness comes from the inside out. By focusing on principles, aligning with enduring truths, and practicing these 7 habits, individuals can not only achieve more but live with greater fulfillment and peace. And that's it. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Thanks for listening to Book Nibbles. If you enjoyed this bite-sized book, don't forget to subscribe for more quick, insightful summaries. See you in the next nibble.